Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carol Peters, and I am thrilled to introduce you to our guest speakers today, as well as Ivy Cirillo from our team. I am super passionate about strengths and Strengths Finder and excited just for this first professional or personal discovery session that we're hosting here today through United Way Next. I serve as president and CEO, and I will tell you that a big part of my journey has been sharing my strengths over the years. No surprise, I'm a learner and I'm also strategic. I'm an empath, so empathy is a big part of my strengths. And the other two are up for grabs because I can't remember what they are at the moment. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ivy, who's going to help us with some, just setting some expectations for today and then introducing our guest speakers.
So my name is Ivy Cirillo, and I'm the Marketing Communications and Events Manager at United Way Next. I'm also a member. I joined the team earlier this year after my time at Sioux Empire United Way, and I absolutely love personality assessments and all things brains, basically. And my strengths are individualization, strategic, focus, futuristic, and significance. For today's session, you are more than welcome to ask questions as we are going through the presentations. Feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand and you can ask them out loud. If you wanted to ask anything a little bit more personal but want to keep it anonymous, feel free to send me a direct message and I'll read it out loud for you. And after the session, I will be sure to send everyone a copy of the slides and any resources mentioned during today's call. And if you need any accommodations, you are more than welcome to turn on closed captions, but anything else, feel free to send me a message and I will try to help you out. And then I will hand it over to our speakers, Anna and Kathleen.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Anna Murphy. I'm the president and CEO of United Way of Southwest Michigan. So, yep, I'm still current. This will be my 27th year, and I've never changed United Ways. It's the same United Way. So, yeah, so it's been a long journey, and we started working with strengths within the last 24 months. Mine are positivity, relator, learner, developer, and woo. So I love the woo. It's just it keeps me grounded. All of my strengths keep me grounded to stay as positive as I can. And I think that I really was tested through COVID and some of these other challenges that I'll share in a moment. But that positivity is what kept me going. And so I'm excited to be here. I am a member of Next. I love the work that Next is doing. As I look at what my next is, I'm hoping to stay connected with Next. There's a lot of Next. But yeah, I love what they're doing to support us as we try to figure out and navigate what our next is. So my friend and colleague and fellow pickleball player, Kathleen Wolf with the Purpose Partners, is here to really kind of lead this session around CliftonStrengths and Resiliency, and I will turn it over to Kathleen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kathleen Wolf with the Purpose Partners. I'm so glad to be here. I have been a friend of United Way for many years now and have had the honor of working with United Way Southwest Michigan. My top strengths are maximizer, activator, strategic, communications, and futuristic. But what I'm going to do first, before we jump in, is let you know that you don't need to already have your Clifton strengths. We are going to help you understand your natural talents through this process, but I will share my screen, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone feels comfortable that if you don't have your strengths, we'll give you an opportunity to learn more about your natural talents. And on the back end of this, we'll have a special offer for you if you are interested in learning your Clifton strengths. So let me share our screen. And wow, you are all seeing
That's your, I don't know what strength that is, but
yeah,
probably maximizer.
That is my desktop, which is kind of scary right now. boy, we practice this, and then of course it's not working. It worked when we practiced this. Just a
Would you
moment.
like me to pull mine up? Would that help?
Let me try one more time. And there we go. Let's see.
This is where it's great to have perseverance as the strength, if that's one, right?
Yes. There we go.
There you go.
And I gave you all a little insight into my messy desktop. So I would say that's an area of my lesser strengths, is keeping my desktop clean. But I'm going to share the full screen. And today we're going to be talking about building organizational resilience through strengths. And like we talked about our personal strengths, you'll have this presentation available if you want to refer to our strengths later. But I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that this is interactive. So today, why don't you use the chat feature and let us know where you're joining us from today. Anyone? I happen to be joining from St. Joe, Michigan.
So am
Columbus,
I.
Ohio.
What a
Awesome.
coincidence. Oh, I want to be in Marco Island, Florida, or Las Vegas.
Yes. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I used to be an account manager in Minnesota, and my territory used to take me to Sioux Falls. So hello, Sioux Falls.
And I used to live in Las Vegas.
There we go.
So there you go.
I have played a pickleball tournament in Las Vegas.
There is a connect for everyone.
Awesome. And then there is the reaction button down at the bottom of your screen. Give us your favorite reaction. All right, clapping, hearts. Love it. Oh, blue hearts. Interesting. All right. And so I also wanted to mention that for today's session, we have the companion guide. This was sent to you by Ivy, and it's just a nice way to help you follow along with our content. And like Ivy said too, if there's any questions, by all means, just chime in. So I want to start with a question. Have you ever experienced burnout in your work? Raise your hand using the Zoom icons. All right, yes. So Tanya, I'm seeing yes. Okay. Anna, yes. There's Ivy. I think it's a rhetorical question because who hasn't experienced burnout at work? We're seeing it become more of an issue with all of these challenges that we face. So the first thing I want to do is help you identify your burnout triggers. So in your step 1 in your companion guide, think about the factors that contribute most to your stress and burnout. I'll give you a moment to check the boxes that apply to you. So it just so happens that today in a session at United Way, Southwest Michigan, we were talking about the importance of accountability and setting clear goals. And we want to do that so that we make sure that the team there is not stressed, that they know what they're accountable for. But I can tell you, work-life balance has been a struggle lately. I've been dealing with a sick family member, and I needed flexibility in my schedule. And even with that flexibility, when you start to overload on outside stressors, it can carry over into your work. So be mindful of your triggers as you think about developing strategies for being more resilient. The World Health Organization says burnout is characterized by exhaustion, mental distance, when you start to feel that fog and that you really can't jump into your work and be fully present. And when you experience stress and burnout, you are less effective in your role. And what we're seeing right now, Gallup, the organization behind CliftonStrengths, has found that 3 in 4 American workers said that they experience burnout on the job at least sometimes. And we've all just mentioned that we have in ourselves experienced it. So 29% of people report this feeling very often or always. And when you're feeling more sick and burned out and stressed, you're more likely to need to take a sick day. And then it starts that spiral of getting behind in your work. And then you're more stressed. And then you start to feel burned out. And sadly enough, when you get in this cycle and you get this feeling of stress and burnout, 23% of people are more likely to visit the emergency room. We don't want you to get into that predicament. We want to head this off, and that's why we're doing this session. So we want you to recognize your reactions to stress or burnout, because once you can start to understand the triggers and recognize your reactions, you're able to head stress and burnout off earlier. So I'll give you a moment. When facing adversity, how do you typically respond? Select the top 2 or 3. Does somebody want to share? I'll tell you from my personal experience, I tend to push through without asking for help, and I'll go, 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 and then all of a sudden I hit a brick wall. Sounds familiar. Does anybody else want to share?
I try to use humor to stay positive because positive is one of my strengths. So if I can be positive to get through things, I'll be, but that's also can be very exhausting to always be positive and always be on.
Yes.
As somebody that is neurodivergent, I definitely do the pushing through without asking for help, become overwhelmed and struggle to take action. ADHD paralysis is real. And then I also use humor. I wouldn't say to stay positive, but to make light of. And that's at least what I've noticed in my life.
Yes. Yes, we all have our coping mechanisms. And what's interesting here, when we look at strengths, all strengths are good and all strengths are equal. But strengths also have what we call balconies and basements. And so when we are in our area of natural strength, we're clicking on all cylinders. We're feeling like everything is going well. But one of my strengths, communications. And if I feel like the group is not interactive, or if I feel a little stressed out, I have to watch that I don't dominate the conversation, because that's me over indexing on a strength. Or if I become quiet, you know that something's wrong because I'm not using one of my strengths. And Anna shared that, you know, she has positivity as one of her top strengths. And Anna is going to talk to you about some of the challenges that she's faced in her organization and what she experienced with positivity is that it's tough being positive all the time when there's challenges within your organization. So we'll share a little bit about that with you. But it's important to recognize your reactions to stress and burnout, because once you're aware of it, that's when you can do something about it. So stress and burnout experienced even by one person in your organization can affect the entire team. And so that's why it's important to recognize and look for these triggers. So Anna, why don't you tell us about the experience that you had at United Way, Southwest Michigan?
Yes, as soon as I get myself off of mute. I don't know how long we'll be on Zoom before I realize that mute doesn't work if you want to talk. So, yeah, we've had some challenging times at United Way of Southwest Michigan over the last, well, kind of started with COVID, but then into some deeper internal discourse, probably as we got into the latter part of 2023. We were experiencing some significant organizational change. I was confronted with feedback that really challenged me to reflect deeply on my leadership, everything I knew, and its impact on the team. And what we had was a staff had shared concerns about a perceived disconnect between leadership and staff, and the feeling that employees were reluctant to speak up. You know, this feedback, while very difficult to hear, became a pivotal moment in our cultural transformation. This period of time also marked the loss of several staff, and I think we actually had a turnover staff in about a 12-month period of almost 8 people. We've gone from a 22-person organization to 12, well, 13, if you will. But that's not all that was happening during that time. We also faced some financial and operational challenges. We had a retirement of our longtime director of finance. We were going through a transition to outsource our financial consulting. And then we had the residual impacts of a weaker 2023 campaign. So there was a lack of consistent financial reporting during the consultant's onboarding time that created a very understandable concern among the board members. So not only did I have challenges within the team, but I also was managing some challenges as a board. But instead of caving, I turned to my strengths. And so I have developer and learner. Not just positivity was there and it was trying to always be there, but I really needed to dig a little bit deeper into a couple of the other strengths. And so how and what I can learn from the experience, how and what I can learn from others that have experienced what I was going through, because I soon figured out that I wasn't alone. And then how can we create, how and what can we create that would bring us out better on the other side? And how would this demonstrate being resilient? But on a personal note, thrown into this, it was the start of 2024 was also the start of my personal wellness journey that was preparing myself for a much needed hip and knee replacement. But I think what I learned in the personal part was that personal wellness is really, really important as well as a leader. And so what is resilience? And I think right now, every organization is being tested. Every person within a nonprofit organization is being tested. But for a nonprofit organization, resilience means the capacity to withstand and adapt to challenges such as funding losses, shifting community needs, or operational disruptions, while still pursuing our mission and pursuing it effectively. So nonprofits, we have to adapt our strategies. We have to diversify our funding sources, invest in strong leadership and staff well-being, maintain strong community and stakeholder relationships. We use setbacks as learning opportunities, and I think that's really key. So in short, as the slide says, it's springing back into shape. So, if we look at our work and I look at my personal, I look at all of these things, to be resilient, I needed to address all of these. And then how we were addressing some of these, and Kathleen's kind of alluded to a few of them. But understanding that we needed to stabilize, rebuild, we needed to ensure that every team member is felt, seen, heard, valued. We immediately initiated engagement surveys to give the staff a direct voice in shaping how our workplace culture needed to be. And the results of those surveys drove specific action goals aimed at fostering a more inclusive or respectful, empowering environment. So basically, we began to refocus our leadership around back to basic strategy, and really emphasizing on the core mission, the operational excellence, strengthening internal trust. And so by the end of 2024, we started seeing some movement. But remember, we also had these financial challenges. And so working with our finance committee and our consultant and our staff to really start rebuilding those pieces as well. But in total, as a leader, I made it a priority to address the complex realities head on, as opposed to shying away and pretending it didn't work, but really being transparent with the staff and board about the challenges. We established clear priorities, open communications, we recentered our mission, and we really needed to align our responsibilities and our individual talents. So we really placed a strong emphasis on leveraging the unique strengths of myself and the team, and as well as the board. And so by incorporating Gallup strengths into our team development, we ensured that the roles were better aligned with natural skills. And that's a really important term to understand. But we fostered greater ownership, accountability, satisfaction, and not only did it improve, I think, individual performance, but also strengthened our collective ability to overcome challenges. We've seen measurable improvements. We've been working with strengths for now about 24 months, very different where we were 2 years ago to where we are today. We infuse the language and the work into almost everything we do. But there's a lot of work that remains, but I think that we have emerged more resilient, more aligned, more energized around the collective future. But our strengths enabled us to be resilient. And we basically didn't give up, but it's been a interesting ride. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, but today we talked to your full staff about the progress. So that was really exciting to see the investment that was made in a strengths-based strategy and a strengths-based culture over a year and a half ago now turn into real results. So very exciting. And, have you ever had one of those days where you're just like, yes, yes? More than likely, if you have, you are working in your area of strength. And so if you haven't done the Clifton Strengths Assessment, think about that time when you are feeling like, wow, I can't believe the day just flew by. More than likely, what you were doing is working in your area of natural talent. If you felt like things were clicking on all cylinders and you're like, wow, I don't know how I did that. That's amazing. More than likely, you were working in your area of strengths. And what we tried to do at United Way Southwest Michigan is help the people understand their natural talents so that they can invest in those areas through learning and development, and then apply those talents to become strengths in their work. So for those of you who have not done the Clifton Strengths Assessment, it's okay. Because when you're at your best, think about the 3 words others would use to describe you. Or when you're at your best, how would you describe yourself? So I would love for you to take a moment in your companion guide and go to step 3 and identify those 3 words. If you know your strengths, put in your top 3 strengths. Okay. So when we're talking about strengths, there are 34 strengths, but they tend to align in 4 different domains: executing, influencing, relationship building, or strategic thinking. And so look and see if those words that you use to describe yourself, or words that somebody would use to describe you, fall in one of these 4 domains. So when you think about people who are executing, that they get stuff done, they make ideas a reality, they tend to be strengths like achiever, arranger, discipline, focus, responsibility, or restorative. Restorative is all about those people who are problem solvers. There's the influencing domain. I happen to fall in the influencing domain. I love to take charge, speak up, and make sure that other people's ideas are heard. And I have the strength of activator and communication and maximizer. But like we said, Anna has woo. Woo stands for winning others over. It may be the competition is strength. If you like to race the person next to you in a car, you probably have competition as one of your top strengths. But that's the influencing domain. Those of you who are relationship builders, you are the glue that holds a team together. You are the person that has this unique ability to make sure that the group is better and is more than the individual strengths. And so you might have connectedness. You can see how things work together. You might have developer, an interest in developing yourself, but also others. Positivity, we talked about Anna and her positivity strength. And relator, somebody who has a very easy and natural time relating to others, and they want to work with others towards a goal. That's a relator strength. And lastly, the strategic thinking domain. These are the people who are really good at keeping people focused on what could be. So they might be analytical. They see things more in black and white. Context. They use history to figure out what's coming next. Futuristic. I have the futuristic strength. We look at what's possible in the future to start our actions. Ideation, intellection. Intellection, people high in the intellection strength, they might be quiet at first, but they're mulling over ideas and thinking about what is possible. The learner strength, it's not just about learning new things, but it's the process of learning and putting that into practice, as well as strategic. People high in strategic usually have a plan A, but they have a plan B and a plan C. So if things go wrong, they can pivot and still stay on strategy. So as you think about your words that you put down or your strengths, think about which domain that they might fall into, because your strengths can help you deal with burnout and become more resilient. When you're working in your area of strengths, things become more natural and almost effortless to get progress. So I'll give you a moment in your companion guide to think about which domain you most closely identify with. And if you'd like, type it in the chat. Okay, we've got a relationship builder. Thank you for sharing. All right. So leaders who are authentic know themselves really well. They acknowledge their strengths as well as the strengths of others, and they're better able to manage their work. It's about creating a culture, and Anna actually was very introspective and reflective about her strengths, and then very strategic in how she wanted to create the culture. So tell us about the culture and how you could do that at United Way Southwest Michigan without getting burned out.
I think I had to get burned out first for it to kind of snap me back. But I think that I was just noticing the drag with people. And I think that when you are truly working in those strengths, you just experience a more delightful environment. And I think that by committing to doing strengths, and it was interesting because I don't think everyone was real high on it at first. We've had to stay in it. And I think that what I saw in the last, previous 18 months was a completely different dynamic than what we're seeing today. I actually see a little bit more of those joyful moments, those wins. We're willing to talk about it and share with a lot more ease and comfort. So I can't say enough. And it's not Kathleen. Well, it is kind of Kathleen too. But it is really just, I finally found something as a leader that really resonated and made sense to instill in the team and invest in the team.
One thing that I would add there too is that, like I said earlier, all strengths are good and all strengths are equal.
Mm-hmm.
But we as individuals can't be great at everything. And what I've seen at United Way Southwest Michigan is that people are starting to recognize their own strengths, but they're recognizing the strengths of others. And so when you realize that you don't have to do everything, it's a weight off your shoulders. And knowing that you could tap into somebody else who has a different strength than you, it makes a world of difference when you know that other people have your back. And that's where I've also seen a difference in your organization as well.
Well, and just a note on that, we did have to work through a little bit of individuals not wanting to change other people versus I need to reflect those strengths in myself. And so I think once we got past some of that, because it's a real natural tendency to say, well, that person needs to do something different. It's like, well, no, it's not their strength. So, we can't keep forcing that. So what are my strengths and how do I help that other person's strengths show up?
Right. It's our diversity that truly makes us stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that in your organization for
Well,
sure.
and that's the diversity that we have, as Kathleen said, because we are about 90% female. And so we've got to pull out those other opportunities to demonstrate that diversity and to use that diversity. And strengths really does that.
Yes. And so I want you to refer to your companion guide again in step 3 and think about How can your strengths help you manage stress and build resilience? Recall where you might fall in the 4 domains and check that box that applies to your strength. I'll give you a moment to do that. Relationship builder. Okay, I'm looking at the chat. I see relationship builder. I see strategic thinking. Yes. Okay. So then we do have some best practices for building resiliency and reducing burnout. The first one is listen to your work-related problems. Like Anna said, she needed to pay attention to the change that didn't come knocking on her door, but she needed to listen to what was going on within her organization. Not only physically listen, but watch for the cues. And so the best way to prevent burnout is to have a manager that actually listens, actively listens. And according to Gallup, those managers who are willing to listen to their team, their work-related problems, their teams are 62% less likely to be burned out. So listening to and understanding an employee is the first way of supporting them. And good leaders will do whatever is possible to support their team. Number 2 is to encourage teamwork. So like we said, we are stronger together. And so the diversity of our strengths give us the ability to create more capacity, because coworkers really can provide another line of emotional support to their coworkers who are struggling. It doesn't always fall on the manager or the leader. It's so nice when we can come together, because coworkers tend to understand the frontline stress better along with their colleagues than perhaps some of the leaders. But it is the manager's responsibility to create a culture where teamwork thrives. So when you have a leader who creates a strengths-based culture, people can naturally support others from their area of natural talent. And then also make sure to ensure that everyone's opinions are heard. We wouldn't have known some of the issues at United Way Southwest Michigan had we not done the employee engagement surveys. And what we saw, having just completed the 3rd iteration of the same employee engagement and organizational assessment survey, is a change. And full transparency, the 2nd survey had some areas where the progress declined. And that was hard for us to hear, but it gave us a clue that the areas that we originally focused on were improved, but that there were some other issues that we needed to address as well. And so now we've seen them improve as well. And as I mentioned, we talked today with the team about how to continue improving. So it is this continuous improvement process of applying your strengths. But when employees feel like their opinions are welcome, they can make a difference. And this ownership reduces burnout because they have a part in making things better. They feel like they have more control of what's happening in their work life as opposed to things just happening to them.
And I will tell you that when we did the very first engagement survey, it was a little bit brutal. But I appreciated that because it meant that there was, honesty, and there was a real need to address the challenges. But that's when I have to dig into other strengths that I have, because it was it was, what's the word I want? It was challenging all 5 of my top strengths as those positive ones. I had to dig deeper into strengths that I hadn't used in a while. They show up, but they weren't there and didn't really need to be as often. And that's what I've had to do now because we've shifted so much that some of the work that I'm doing, I'm back in some of the day-to-day things that takes different strengths. And so I really had to reflect on beyond the 5 in order to not feel that stress and the those kinds of things. So
Yes, yes. And so when you think about using your strengths to be more resilient, like Anna just talked about, uh, we've got some strategies. So if you happen to lead with executing strengths, take time to reflect on your situation. Focus on the positives in your current work situation. And if you lead with executing strengths, create a plan to make things better. If you are just relying on things to magically get better, the executing strengths in you are not going to be happy. You want a plan. If you lead with influencing strengths, uh, think about intense physical activities because you need to get some of this energy out. So you tend to be a high energy person, and then also I would encourage you that as you're walking, as you're on a bike, or as Anna and I have alluded to, we're pickleball fanatics. As we are whacking that pickleball, you can also think about strategies that have helped you get over challenges in the past. If you lead with relationship building strengths, view your current situation as a challenge and make an effort to spend time with family outside of work or friends because they will re-energize you. And then you can think about the relationships that you need to either build or mend within the organization to help you overcome these challenges. And finally, if you lead with strategic thinking, because you tend to be always on, use relaxation and mindfulness techniques. Uh, and and think about how you've overcome things before, because as you are sitting in the stress, realize that you have overcome challenges in the past and you are resilient. And so these are ways to use your strengths to continue to be even more resilient. And so what I want you to do next, because activator is my number 2 strength, is I want you to develop your strengths-based resilience plan. So think about a challenge that you're currently facing, and then identify how you'll use your strengths or your natural talents to help you address that. You can refer to section 4 in your companion guide. I'll give you a moment to do that. And then also think about what support tools or strategies you can use to help yourself become more mindful of the stress and burnout and be even more resilient. Of those items in the companion guide, do any of those stand out for you? You can add that to the chat. I just added my personal favorite. When I have challenges, I love reaching out to what I call my personal board of directors. They are my group of mentors who I know will be very transparent with me. And they'll tell it like it is and say, like, okay, get over this, get moving. Or they'll let me sit with it for a little bit and give me ideas on how to overcome those challenges. I see someone focusing on what I can control. Yes. What is that? Yeah. Control what you can control. I get that as well. So the last step in building this okay, there's somebody who said a fan of meditation and going on a run. Trent, thanks for sharing. That whole flow with runners, I've never quite understood it because I'm not a runner, but I hear it is very, very cathartic for people who enjoy running.
It's no different than pickleball, Kathleen. We just don't
Yes.
go the same distance.
There we go.
It's
Thank
very
you.
cathartic. Actually,
Yes.
crafts are cathartic. Oh, I can't even go into the craft thing right now. Sorry.
Yes. So just lastly then, I want you to commit to action because as we started this, we said it's not just knowing what you're good at or your strengths, it's actually applying them. And so Carol talked to us about how she has applied her strengths in interviews and in conversations. So I want you to commit to action. So, what one action will you take this week to build resilience using your strengths? All right. So I just want to pause here and ask if there's any reactions or any questions that you'd like to ask Anna or I.
Super quick before we get into kind of any Q&A, I just wanted to let anyone know that if you have to hop off before the hour, we completely understand. We just want to say thank you for joining us today. And if you're watching, thank you for watching the replay. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, ask them out loud, or drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure that they are answered in the recording. And I'll also pass along Anna and Kathleen's email so you can touch base then as well. And then I will also just ask a question quickly. Do you have any resources for finding out within our strengths what weaknesses might fall into each of them?
Yes. So when we started talking about balconies and basements, what CliftonStrengths does is it talks about the normal space of a strength when it's good. Sometimes we over-index, so too much of a good thing can be bad, but there are these basements. And so if you find yourself procrastinating, or if you find yourself getting your energy drained, that means that you are in the basement of your strength. And so you just have to watch out for that and pay attention to your energy because it has a lot to do with understanding whether or not you are in that flow of your strengths. If you feel drained, more than likely you're not in your area of strength. And that is considered, quote, a weakness. Or I would also call it an area of lesser talent.
I think I spent many days in the basement when we were experiencing the internal challenges that we had, and it just became overwhelming. And I think that when I started to combine my personal wellness with my organizational wellness, I think some things started to click. Because as we talked earlier, our strengths are who we are at in our organization as well as who we are in our personal lives. And so I needed to click on some things personally, and I think that they just kind of started to happen in work as well. And the more we talked about it, and the more it kept being in front of us, it became a little bit easier, and I started to kind of climb out of the steps, out of the basement and into our first floor. We don't have a second floor, so it's probably good that I stayed at the first floor. But yeah, it was a rough time. It was a rough time.
I just wanted to point out that Trent, he shared that he would add a time block to his schedule, and I do that as well, because I will fill time if I don't have it on my calendar. So I am very intentional, and actually I look at some of my areas of lesser talent, and consistency is one of those. So I actually even use a paper planner that I keep in front of me at all times to make sure that I'm focused on what needs to get done, because I'm aware that that's my area of lesser talent. So I can come up with strategies, because the strategic strength that I have to overcome those areas of lesser talent.
I like how she refers to it as lesser talent.
Yes.
I like that. I should do that. Can I borrow one of those?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe Trent, do you need one?
Another quick question. Do you consider your areas of lesser talent as your non-dominant strengths, or like blind spots within your strengths?
Well, it could be that you have blind spots within your strengths, and those aren't necessarily your areas of lesser talent. So blind spots from strengths often come from the realization, or the lack of a realization, that not everybody does this as well as you. So for me, communication. I can't believe that people don't like to do presentations. But I've experienced that, and I've actually worked with people where we have arranged our jobs differently, where my colleague Kim loved to do the finance, and I was like, she can have that. I'll do the presentations because I enjoy that. And so, but it was a blind spot to me at first, thinking like, what do you mean not everybody has this strength? Not everybody has the strengths that you have. But then in terms of your question about areas of lesser talent, from the CliftonStrengths assessment, it's ranked 1 to 34. And the whole idea is really understand your top 5, because when you're working in your area of top 5, that's when we get those moments that we're like, yes, even into your top 10. You may have some carryover. I see on a day-to-day basis, I probably go to 13 to 15 in my area of strengths. But beyond that, when I'm trying to use those things, it's more of an energy drain for me. And that's why they're area of lesser talent. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Any other questions? Well, I would just say thank you so much for your interaction and engagement. And I hope that between the content and the companion guide, that this time spent today was useful to help you understand what you're really good at and how to apply that to your day-to-day, so that you can avoid stress and burnout and become more resilient. So thank you.
And I'll say thank you to everyone for participating as well, and Ivy and Carol for keeping us on track this process, and allowing us to share our story. And as a fellow CEO or a fellow nonprofit or a fellow whoever I am with people, if you need anything from a in the seat perspective, let me know. I'm more than willing to share certain aspects of that story.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing. And then just quickly before we hop off, I will mention again that I will make sure that you guys all have access to these slides, the companion guide, as well as any additional resources. And I know that Kathleen also had an offer, so I'll give her a moment to share about that. And then when you guys hop off, there will be a quick survey if you wouldn't mind just filling out those couple of questions so we can continue bringing you great events and great speakers.
Excellent. Thanks, Ivy. And so for those of you who may not be familiar with your top 34 strengths, I'd be willing to have you contact me. We will get you a link to the assessment, and it is, I believe it is $60. And for the price of that assessment, I will also throw in a half hour of time where we can debrief and talk about your strengths and how to apply them.
Thank you, Kathleen. That is so generous. Thank you to both Kathleen and Anna for today. I will just say this. I needed this session more than I understood, and so grateful to think about not only our organizational wellness, but our personal wellness, because United Way Next is very focused this year on sustainability, creating capacity, and ensuring we have the right infrastructure to sustain the organization that we've rebranded and rebuilt over the last 3 years. But as one can imagine, that takes a toll on the individuals who are doing the work day to day. And so I can see from this session that Ivy, myself, and our colleague Kirsten, who's new on our team, the three of us could benefit from talking about our strengths and what we identify as some of the opportunities to support each other, as Kathleen described, about finding the less talented areas where others can lean in. So just so grateful. It was really inspiring, and thanks for the opportunity. And to those of you who are on today, it was a small crew, but we had 24 people register. So we know there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this afterwards. So make sure for those of you who didn't join today that you also take advantage of the opportunity that Kathleen offered by leveraging your strengths, taking that assessment, and utilizing some of the time that she'll share with us. And again, thanks to Ivy for all that she does behind the scenes to keep us focused and aligned. Thanks, everybody.